Halley is in a Broadway play right now called The Front Page, by...
It's by Ben Hecht and Charles MacArthur. It's really interesting because these were two guys, they wrote it in 1928. They had never written a play before. They were two Chicago journalists who moved to New York and were hanging out and sort of, oh, can I curse? I'm asking that
absolutely.
2 seconds into the interview. Okay. And they were sort of shooting the shit about like, oh, those days in Chicago when we were journalists, that was so crazy. And they realized there are all these amazing characters from their life as hard-boiled journalists in Chicago. And they realized they wanted to write a play about it. And they did, and they wrote this play that almost never gets produced because it's a 24-character play. And it's not a musical, and that's almost unheard of. But Scott Rudin had the gumption to say, I'm gonna, back this, and it's amazing, and we're having a blast. So the plot of it is John Slattery plays a very charismatic sort of ne'er-do-well reporter named Hildy Johnson, and this is what I love about the play so much is, this is sort of a trope about good writing, especially good playwriting, which is like it's, the most compelling character is someone who wants two diametrically opposed things, and that's who this character is. So he at once lives and breathes journalism, which, we were talking about backstage, can sort of be a substitute for show business, which is like, this is killing me. It's a horrible life. I love everything about it. It makes me want to die, and I live for it. So he wants to be a journalist, and he wants to marry me, and I've basically given him an ultimatum, which is like, you can't be a journalist because it's like, he's like a booze hound and a skirt chaser. It's just like, a really degenerate lifestyle. And he wants to marry me, and he wants to stay there, and the play sort of, among other things, hinges on that. And he has this incredibly charismatic, sort of Svengali-esque boss who's played by Nathan Lane, and so it's the pull between those things is sort of the tension of the play. Nathan is amazing. That's like, I would do the play for free just to sit in his dressing room for 5 minutes a week. Yeah, he's just, I've never met anyone who works harder. Mm-hmm. He works all the time. That's what I love about getting to work with really successful people is like, I think part of me, because I don't think I'm a lazy person, but I do procrastinate sometimes, and I want to tell myself like, oh, well, this person is successful because they got lucky, because that feels like a cop-out, and then I don't have to work so hard, and then I work with Nathan Lane, or like years ago I worked with Ben Stiller, and you get to see like, oh, this person's Nathan Lane or Ben Stiller because they never stop working. And he's just brilliant and inspired, but he's inspired, and he's thinking about the play all the time. He wrote a sort of new joke because he's added a couple touches.
Ben Stiller?
No, Nathan Lane, but Ben Stiller did that too. But like Nathan Lane, he's punched up parts of the script.
With they're dead.
Yeah, they're dead.
What can they say?
Yeah, we're smarter than them anyway, so yeah, you're welcome. But he added a joke after opening. It's not like, oh, let's do this and then the critics will like it. It's like, I want to make this as good as it possibly can be.
How fabulous.
Yeah, it's cool.
Let me ask you, in terms of Front Page, as an actor now, because you're a playwright, obviously, what work have you already done when you come to the first rehearsal of a play?
Before the first rehearsal, it's different. I guess, to be really honest, I try to come as much like with a sort of tabula rasa state of mind as possible, because I have no idea. Like this play, for instance, I auditioned for this play.
I was just going to ask you, did you have to audition?
I did.
Did you?
I did, and
Did you have callbacks?
Yeah. Oh, was there a callback? No, I think I just had one audition. Yes. And it was the first audition I've been on in a year and a half, because I've been writing for TV. I've been unavailable. I've been in a writer's room just getting paler for 2 years. So I did audition for this, and the work I did to prepare for it, this is kind of embarrassing, but I didn't really realize that this play, when you see it, if you do see it, it's very clearly like a comedy. It's very dark, but there's a lot of laughs. It's a dark comedy, and I sort of knew that that's what its reputation was, but I read it from a very personal place, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is a tragedy that this young woman is desperately in love with this man who is incapable of giving her what she wants. And not to get too personal, but I've been in that situation. So I read it crying. I was like, this is so sad. This reminds me of when I was in that bad relationship, and that's not what the play is. So I went into my audition and they're like, what are you doing? This is a comedy. So it's like anyway, what I'm trying to say is like very often my ideas are wrong. So I try to show up with as much of a blank slate as possible, which is basically a long way of saying I don't do any work before I go.
I don't believe you. What do you know now that you wish you would have known then?
Oh, when's then?
Then, before you were anybody that anybody knew about.
The first thing I'll say is this. I struggled for years when I was younger. I still struggle with it, but much less so. But I struggled for years with competitiveness and envy of people who I felt were doing better than me and had what I wanted. And if I just booked this TV show or got my play produced here, or not even such lofty things, like got a reading of my play at this off Broadway theater, or got an audition for this thing, like if I just did that, then I would be happy. And how come she got that and I didn't? And how come he did that and I don't even like his play? And like really dark, unkind thoughts. And I see now how much that hurt me, both in terms of like on a sort of metaphysical level, like it's just never good to think those kinds of things about anyone, but really more selfishly, it's like if I'm going through the world being like, how did you do that? And like then I'm not really sort of like creating abundance in my own life. And so that's something that I have realized in the last several years is so important, is just be as supportive as I can be of everyone, especially the people who always get my parts, especially the playwrights who are getting the productions at the theaters where I want to, like, get to know those people, be friends with them, tweet about them, go to their shows, like tell them how awesome they are, like ask them how they do it, like, because for years, I would be embarrassed to say it, except that I'm trying not to be, because I think it's so important to be honest about this stuff. Like for years, I just felt like so resentful of people who had what I thought would make me happy that it prevented me like from working hard, because that blocks up your channel, I think. So that's one thing. And the second thing, I mean, in addition to that, is also like when you get those things, that's what I found. I was like, that doesn't actually even make you happy, you know, because then you just have more work to do and that's really stressful. So that's another thing too, which is like, I love the work that I get to do, as I'm sure all of us do, but it's like I have to also let go. This has been really liberating, is like, here's a dumb example, but like, you know, I sold a TV show this year and then I found out the network that I sold it to was passing on it. And I was like, oh, bummer. Okay, and then I moved on to the next thing and I was like, that's weird, am I like clinically depressed? Like, why do I not really care that much? And I was like, oh, because I know that even if that TV show went and I became a millionaire, like that wouldn't make me happy. So I'll just do the next thing. Like, you know, it's like that's been a really liberating thing.
Where did you get this philosophy? Did you study it? Are you a Buddhist? Are you
I do. No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't call myself a Buddhist, no, but I have to do a lot of work on myself. Yeah.
Yes. Mantra
I do
things.
A lot of meditation.
My latest mantra is, it's not a crisis, Karen.
I think that's good. There's another one called, how important is it really? I like that one, because it's like, how important is my TV show? It's just not that big of a deal. There's so many other things going on. And also, like, this isn't the last TV show, like, because that was something that was always in my brain too. Like, if I don't book this part, like, this is it, that's the end. And it's like, that's just not how the world works. It just is not that. So that was the one thing. And then I had another piece of advice. Oh, this one's really important, which is, I basically already said it, but I think it bears me saying it in a different way, which is just working really hard. Because like, here's a dumb example, but like, I remember years ago I said to my friend, like, how come no theaters are producing my plays? And she's like, have you written a play? And I was like, no. Like, I had written like a collection of short plays, and I was like, I've sent that to all these theaters, and they said no. And she's like, because people don't produce collections of short plays unless you're like David Mamet. Like, what are you doing? And I was like, oh yeah, I'm too scared to sit down and write a full-length play. So I did my sort of cop-out, half-ass, like, and like, of course no one wants to produce that. So I had to sit down and carve out the time and do the work and like have readings and have them go horribly and feel humiliated and keep doing it over and over and over and over and just work my ass off. And that's how you get successful, I think, as it turns out. Like, it's not just sort of like, you know, a fairy taps you on the shoulder. It's like you just work your ass off, basically, and be nice to people. There's an actress named Ari Grainer who said to me years ago, like, when you're asking for what you want, be a pain in the ass, not an asshole. Oh, that's which good. I think is really good, which is like you can, you know, ask for what you need in a work environment, but in a nice way.
You were an actor first. Mm-hmm. And at a very young age?
Yeah.
Like 12?
Yeah, I started acting when I was 12.
In a
yeah.
summer camp?
Yes, you really did do your research.
And it was prime of Miss Jean Brodie?
How do you know all these things?
I looked them up.
But where are those even on the internet?
You're on the internet.
Oh,
Your
really?
IMDb, all these things about you.
that's another good piece of advice. Don't Google yourself.
Oh, it's awful. And you can't get your age taken off.
Yeah, but you know what? I don't care about that because I actually
you don't care about it now.
Yeah, but I do think it's part of like being a feminist is being like, yes, this is how old I am. I've done so many awesome things in these years. You're welcome. Yeah. I really am trying to do that.
When did you start writing a play? How did that happen?
So I always wanted to be a writer and an actor.
You did.
And I have parents who do many things. My dad is a cartoonist and an illustrator and a novelist and a playwright and a screenwriter and a children's book author. And my mom is, a solo performer and a essayist. And
Jenny Allen.
Yes, exactly. Oh, she's brilliant.
I heard.
And so for better or worse, I grew up in a home of artists, and a multidisciplinary artist. So it never occurred to me that I couldn't do both those things. And I'm grateful for that. So I did always want to do both those things, but I will say I focused on acting much more for years and years because it was easier in that with acting, you get an email that says, here's your audition, here's the lines that you learn, go here at this time.
And you're working with people. You're with a group of people.
Yes.
You're not alone.
Exactly. Whereas with writing, you have to be your own disciplinarian. I stopped drinking almost 8 years ago, and that's when my writing really took off, because then I was like, I can sit and think and do things. Like, I couldn't do it before. And that's when I really got the motivation and the discipline. And I will say, I used this word earlier, but the humility, because it's so humbling to sit there and be like, this is really bad. I have to just keep going. Like, I'm writing a first draft of a play right now. It's really bad. It's just not good at all. And I have to just keep writing it.
How do you know that? Have you had somebody read it?
Not yet. I just know. I mean, I think there's a kernel of goodness there. And I think it could be something really good, but it's just not good yet. And I know my process. I know every play I've ever written or everything I've ever written is not good, and I have to work on it for years and years and years and years and years until it's remotely okay to let another human who's paying money come see it.
So you played drunk in the movie. He's way more famous than you.
Yeah.
That's the title. I love it.
Oh, thank you.
And it's about an actress named Halley.
Yeah.
Who drinks a lot. Mm-hmm. And so, as I watched it, I thought, playing drunk as an actor is really hard. How did you do it?
I don't know. I was nervous. I mean, there are certain milestones for me as an actor that caused me tremendous anxiety. Like, playing drunk was one of those, crying on like each of those things, the first time that you have to do it, at least for me, I'm like, I can't do this. I should just quit. And then you find a way to do it and you move through it, and then you get more and more confidence. So with that, I think the first time I had to play drunk in that movie, because I play a really sick alcoholic, but it's funny. But I was really nervous, and then the more I did it, the more confident I got. And the person who directed that is named Michael Urie. He's an actor and an amazing director, and creates such a warm, loving environment that for me, and I think the other actors in that movie, we all felt so nurtured that really helped, I think, me feel comfortable to play around and take risks. But with the drunk thing, I wasn't trying to play not drunk. Although I do think in that movie I was, my character's drinking really inappropriately.
Well, I loved it when you tried to talk.
Yeah, I guess I was trying to, because she's drinking inappropriately. She doesn't know she's an alcoholic, and she doesn't know that it's obvious to everyone, which was my experience when I was drinking too, which is like, this is normal, everyone does this. It's like, no, we're all so worried about you. So I did try, in the movie, I'm like drinking secretly while shooting a movie within the movie, and I think I was trying to pretend like everyone has a couple glasses of wine when you're shooting a movie, but that movie's so over the top, and the tone of that movie is so heightened that I felt like you had to really go 150%.
How did you like working with the director on that film?
It was a love fest, totally, because I co-wrote it with his partner, Ryan Spahn.
That's right.
And we wrote it in their apartment. The reason we wrote that movie is because we were both struggling with debilitating depression because no one would hire us as actors. He moved to New York to be an actor. I had acted in a bunch of movies and plays, and for a year it was just radio silence, and couldn't get a job, no money, living on unemployment, no life, it was a horrible year, horrible dead of winter. And he was like, do you want to write a movie together? And I was like, I just really want to lie in bed and cry and eat, but okay, I guess, because I had nothing on my schedule. And and that's how we wrote that movie. So sometimes I like telling that story because it's like the darkest times can produce light if you seize that opportunity.
Did you improvise it a lot? Did you try different things? I mean, since it is your script.
Yes and no. There's not that much improvisation in that movie. I'm not big into improvisation, I think, because I am a playwright.
Yeah.
And so, like, in my plays, for instance, I'm really neurotic about, or I shouldn't use a negative word, but I'm meticulous about, like, punctuation, about every word I scrutinize. Oh. So if there's an it has to be here. It cannot be after the but. It has to be before, and the actors have to memorize exactly where it's not arbitrary.
Because it's rhythmical.
It's rhythmical, exactly. So it's the same thing with screenwriting, which I only did once with that movie, but like, I love the work. I love like Jill Soloway, for instance. Her work is she really leans heavily on improvisation. It's just not me. I think my background as a playwright is like really just get every single word.
Did you study
right.
playwriting?
No, which is amazing because now I teach it, which is so funny.
Oh, you do?
Yeah.
What do you think of in teaching playwriting? What do you think cannot be taught?
Oh, that's a good question. That's such a good question. I don't know if anything cannot be taught. I mean, I think the most important thing that I tell students, I think this is the most important thing, is like write the story that you need to tell, as opposed to the story that like, you feel like Playwrights Horizons would like because you saw what they did last season. Do you know what I mean? Like, write the thing that's inside you that you're like, it feels like it's making you sick until you throw it up. And then it's gonna be good. And yes, like there will be a lot of work that you need to do, but like coming back to the front page, these guys had never written a play. I think it wasn't very good when they first wrote it, and then George S. Kaufman, the director, came in and helped them shape it. And that's been a lot of my journey because I didn't study playwriting, but then I got to like work with great directors like Trip Coleman, who I know you interviewed here, and he's helped me shape it, and I learned from him, and I learned from so many people, and I learned from the audience, and that's that's how you get to make a good play, I think. But every story that I write has to be something that like I need to get out, otherwise it's not good.
Give me an example, if you can, of what started you writing a certain play. You heard a bit of dialogue from somebody, you got an idea, you got an image,
good
something,
question.
That you remember?
Like a specific play, yes.
Now I'm thinking about I'm going to cry for you so hard.
Yeah. I was thinking about that too. Yeah. So that play, that's a play I wrote called "I'm Going to Pray for You So Hard."
I'm going to pray for you so hard. Did I say cry?
Yeah, but they cry a lot, so that's applicable. So a lot of crying.
I'm going to pray for you so hard, about a daughter who's an actress and a father, just two people on stage, and Reed Birney was the father, who I interviewed.
Did he come here?
Yeah.
Oh, I love him.
You should have heard what he said about you.
Oh,
Never
he
mind.
hates me. Yeah, no, we have a love-hate relationship. Just kidding. Not really. I just texted him this morning and I asked, because we're having like the humans and the front page are having like a Thanksgiving dinner, and I was like, can I sit next to you? And he was like, okay.
That's nice. That's good. But it's about a daughter and a father, and she's just opened an off-Broadway show, and she's waiting for her reviews.
Yeah.
And the father's with her, just the two of them.
Yeah.
And they start off very nice with each other, and they end up screaming and yelling.
Yeah.
And it reveals this all this kid wants is her father to be proud of her.
Yeah.
Something we all can know about.
So that play, this is, I think, the germ of that idea, and then how it came to be what it is a journey that I wouldn't have expected. So that play, I wanted to write about this father-daughter relationship. It felt like something I hadn't seen a lot. Mm-hmm. You've seen a lot of like mother-daughter, father-son, and even mother-son, but I didn't feel like I'd seen a lot of father-daughter stuff. And I wrote this. I was also very interested in exploring kind of what I was talking about earlier, like, how like the search for validation through external means, in this case, like, getting a good review in the New York Times is utterly futile, just as, searching for a fulfilling life in the bottle is utterly futile. And this is particularly apropos in terms of who our president-elect is, I think, not to bring politics into it, but that's someone who's like, oh, if I just get more famous, that will fill the hole, I think. Hashtag it doesn't work. So that's what I wanted to write about, and I tried writing about the father and a daughter, and I was like, it was just bad. It was just not good. The dialogue was not coming easily. It was just stupid and bad. And I was like, this is something, I'm willfully trying to do this, and it's not working. And then I went and saw a play at the Barrow Street Theater close by, a play called No Child by...
Najala
she's
Wasn't that
so...
something?
It blew my mind.
Yeah.
And that play, it's a one-woman show.
All the characters.
She wrote it about her experience teaching in public high school,
right.
and that play couldn't be more different from the play I wanted to write, but she was just so inspiring to me. And for some reason, sometimes when I see good art, I bet this happens to all of us, I have some idea, I have an idea. So I had an idea while I was in that theater. I was like, oh, the first act of the play takes place in their kitchen, the father and the daughter. The second place takes place in this theater, in a black box theater. Or it was being used as a black box for that play, I think, or maybe it wasn't. But it would be this theater as a black box, and it's between the daughter and her boyfriend, and she's basically swapped out her father for her boyfriend. She spoiler alert, she leaves her father at the end of the first act because he does something basically unforgivable, and then we meet her a year later, and she's in a severely emotionally abusive relationship with a man who's basically a stand-in for her father. And so that's how I got that idea, and then I went home and I wrote the boyfriend-daughter scene that night. Then I wrote the daughter-father scene the next morning, and I had a full-length play less than 24 hours after I had that idea. Wow. That's never happened to me before or since. And then the last thing I'll say about it is eventually I cut the boyfriend. He's not even in the play anymore. It's the father and the daughter.
That's all it needed to be.
Yeah, but I needed to, that was my window, because I think that was less scary than the father-daughter thing. Because I was like, I know how to write about sex games, so I did that, and then the sex games are gone because they weren't very interesting, and then I focused on the thing that was scarier but more interesting.
I was going to ask you about sex scenes because you had them in your show, in your movie.
Oh, yeah.
How is it to do sex on a movie set with somebody you don't know very well? Or, what if there's no chemistry?
Well, and he's way more famous than you. It was supposed to be the worst sex that's ever happened ever, because I'm a horrible alcoholic and I'm ruining our lives. Michael Chernus, who's a genius.
Yes.
And I know Michael Chernus and we're friends, so that, that's like a little, it's always a little awkward, but he's just the most lovely, warm person, so it's like that, it felt very safe. And in the fact that it doesn't have to be sexy takes a lot of...
No, that's true.
For some reason, no one's ever cast me in a sex scene that's supposed to be sexy. I'm always just doing the most awful, horrible, awkward things, so I'm good at that.
I'm thinking of the squid and the whale.
Yeah, horrible hand job.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, just the worst hand job in the history of hand job. Yeah. So, yeah, that's sort of my forte.
Noah Baumbach said about you and Margot at the wedding, "She's totally without affect, and whatever she's playing, it feels very close to the bone." Can you account for that you're vulnerable and that it's easy for you to reveal yourself?
Yeah, that's a good question. I do think, for better or worse as a person, I do tend to sort of wear my heart on my sleeve. And I try to be really unfiltered because that's just how I can be the most peaceful. I think I did used to think this is so weird. I remember I read an interview with Christina Ricci in 17 magazine 12 years ago or something, where she said, she was talking really openly about depression, I think. And she said, I have to be a different person with everyone in my life. With everyone who I encounter, I think, how does this person want me to be? And then I have to be that person. And I remember reading that and thinking, A, I completely identify with that, and B, God, how amazing that this woman felt secure enough in herself today. Because I think she was saying, that's how I used to feel, but now I've gotten help and I don't feel that way. And I was like, how inspiring that she feels secure enough to say that in 17 magazine. That's so inspiring. And I remember that was I was like, I want to do that. I just want to be really open about who I am and how I feel, and just be myself as much as I can be. But for instance, yesterday I was on the phone with my agent and I made some dark jokes. He's like, wow, you're getting even darker. Okay. So it's sometimes I think I can be a little inappropriate, but I try to just be really honest and I guess that is vulnerability, just being exactly who I am when it's appropriate, which I do struggle with still, I think.
What's appropriate?
Yeah.
So far, you're completely appropriate.
Oh, good. Well, we haven't gotten through the whole interview yet.
Has acting, obviously being an actress has helped you become a playwright? Do you think that playwrights should take acting lessons?
That's a good question. Yeah, I think so. I mean, I think, this is funny talking about Tripp again. Tripp Coleman, who's the director who I've worked with the most on my plays, makes fun of me because he's like, for someone who's an actor, you seem to forget how hard acting is when you're a playwright. Because, well, you know, I'll give him notes and I'll be like, she needs to say this exactly like this at this time, at this, and he's like,
do you?
Shut up. Yeah, he's just like, Halley, what are you doing? Like,
while you're in the rehearsal with the actors up there, no.
No, I'll pull him aside
whisper.
after and I'll be like, this is me, this, and I'll give him like 7,000 notes. And he's like, you can't dictate performances like that. And like, and I even, you know, and I have like decades of experience as an actor, but like, I think it's so
do you hear your
hard
own
to
voice,
forget.
do you hear your own voice? Is that
when I write?
Yeah.
No.
Oh, you don't?
And I've never written for myself except for that movie.
That movie.
No, I don't hear that, but I hear exactly how it needs to be.
So do you write for other actors?
Yeah, so I'm writing an adaptation of Three Sisters right now, and I wrote almost every character with an actor in mind, and that was really fun and very helpful. I never had really done that before, though, but I'm doing that. And then my new play the bad one that I'm working on right now, I am writing for 2 people specifically. But just to get back to the thing about being an actor,
yeah, and
here's the way that I think it's helped playwriting the most. This is sort of cynical, is connections. I kind of hate that word, but I will say, like, I know for years I thought like, oh, I just need to get a literary agent and then they'll make my dreams come true. And I got a literary agent, and there's only so much another person can do for you. Like, you really do have to do so much yourself. And I think a lot of people will be like, you know, and I have an amazing literary agent right now, and she does so much for me, but I also have to pull my weight. And so, you know, the way that my play got done at the Atlantic, for instance, I'm Gonna Pray for You So Hard, was not from my literary agent submitting it. It was because I had acted in a play at the Atlantic, and I emailed the people from the Atlantic and I said, will you come to a reading of this play? And they said yes. You know, so it's like that's also why I encourage people to like see every play that you can, be involved as much as you can.
Right.
You know, we're right next to the Labyrinth Theater, and they're an amazing example of like, you know, they have, you know, they really encourage crossover in a way that I think is really important, because like, you know, or MCC, where my last play was done, I started there as an actor. That's how they know me.
Yes.
You know, and that's how, you know, I think when my play passed their desk, they were more likely to read it because they knew me as an actor. So I think that's important too. Yeah.
You went to the O'Neill to work on I'm Going to Pray for You So Hard.
Yeah.
Walk me through, as they say, a day at the O'Neill. You get up in the morning.
It's a dream.
Is it?
It is totally dreamy. So, like, I think what distinguishes it from other residencies is that if you're invited there as a playwright, you basically have to stay there for a month. So they work on your play for 1 week, and then the other 3 weeks you're just there and you're writing and you're attending rehearsals and of other people's plays, and you're reading plays, and you're interacting with the students, and you're just a part of this community. And for me, that was really important, because I do think, like, you know, being an interdisciplinarian is so important in this profession. I think so many of us will box ourselves up and be like, I'm a writer, I'm an actor, I'm a director, and there you sort of are encouraged to be a part of all of it. And it's really, it's idyllic. And the best thing is the Wi-Fi signal there is very weak. So it forces you to like really kind of have a sort of monastic life, which I really embraced. Yeah.
Did you ever have an experience where a director or actress have revealed to you a play that you didn't know you wrote?
That's why I love working in this medium, because it is so collaborative. And I have learned that like often my ideas are wrong, or if they're right, they're not as good as what the idea will be once I hear other people's input.
So you like the actors to give you input?
Yes, I
do.
I lean on that.
In rehearsal?
Yes, So for instance, at the O'Neill read, Bernie was incredibly vocal about like, this makes no sense. Why is this here? This is not funny. You know, like things like that, that at first I hadn't worked with an actor who was that vocal, because the only play that I'd had professionally produced was like 3, you know, young women in it who I think were, you know, less vocal. You know, like they would ask questions, but Reed is really like, you know, he's a veteran. I mean, he's basically a saint of the theater. So, and he knows what he's doing. He's a genius. So that was amazing to me, because we were able to make it. I technically wrote the play, but not really, because we kind of all made it together.
Really?
Yes.
And your first meeting with the new director, what do you hope is going to come out of that? What do you hope the director's going to ask you or know already? Or
I will say I tend to try to work with the same
people
director,
you know,
because we now have a shorthand. It's like a, you know, it's like any kind of relationship, you know, a best friend or a partner. You know, it's like this person knows me really well, knows my good parts, my bad parts, knows my style most importantly, and is able to really translate that into speaking to the actors and the designers, all the creative team, and that's not easily done. And you know, someone who's really good at, as I was saying about Michael Urie, and this is how I feel about Tripp, is someone who's really good at cultivating an atmosphere of kindness and love and generosity and safety. That's very important, because I've worked with directors who sort of bank on fear and intimidation, and that doesn't work for me. But I have worked with directors who I don't know well, like especially on readings and workshops and stuff like that. And I guess what I look for is like that they want to help me tell the story that I want to tell, as opposed to like take my story and make it what they want. Because I think that's a danger in directing, is like, I'm going to put my thumbprint on this. And like directing is really a thankless job in many ways. You don't get the credit and the glory. Like if you've done your job well, no one is thinking about what you did. And I've worked with some directors who have been, you know, like, you know, I wrote a play that's a comedy, and someone was like, but I don't think this is a comedy. And I was like, but it just is, you know? So that's sort of, then I know, like, that's a signal, like, all right, we're just on different pages.
And do you break up? I mean, do you say this isn't going to work?
I kill them. No, yeah, I break up. Yeah, yeah. And that was another thing. Like, the first time I had to break up with a director, I was literally crying. And my friend had to sit next to me on a couch while I made the call, because I was so afraid. Whereas now I'm ruthless. Yeah, so it's just, that gets easier. And that's also like, it's not personal, it's business. And that's what I always say. It's like, if you own a bakery and you can't, and these rolls are not selling, you're not gonna be like, I'm so sorry, like the rolls aren't selling, I can't purchase, you know, that flour anymore, I'm so sorry. You just be like, oh, I'm not gonna make those rolls anymore. So that's, you kind of have to be ruthless, but nice, but not that precious about it, I think.
What work do you expect actors to do on your play at the first rehearsal? What work do you expect they've already done?
Nothing.
Okay.
Really, I mean, I don't, at the first rehearsal, I think rehearsal is really time to play. So I kind of think the less work you do, the better.
So you don't expect that they get all their off book?
If it's a new play, no. For the front page, Jack O'Brien, our director, said he was amazing. We did a 1-week workshop a month before we started rehearsals, which is what Scott Rudin tends to do, which I think is brilliant. It was supposed to be a 2-week workshop, but we just did 1 week. And so none of us know our lines, and we're just sitting around a table and we're just screwing around, blah, blah, and we do a reading. And the day of the last reading, he's like, if you come back in 1 month and you're not letter perfect, I'm not gonna be cute.
Wow.
And that was amazing, I thought. And so we all went away, and like I went to Greece on vacation and like learned all my lines and came back letter perfect, but those playwrights are dead. Like, we're not really changing the play that much, you know? But if it's a new play, it changes profoundly. When we gave Betty Gilpin a new monologue at a New Year's Eve party, you know, for I'm Gonna Pray for You So Hard 2 years ago, that she had to put in
that night or something, or the next
night?
night?
I think 2 days later. It was like a 3-page monologue. She was like, why did you think this was appropriate to give to me at a New Year's Eve party? And we were like, sorry, we just thought we were here, and here you go, and learn it. She's like, this is horrible, you know? But she, you know, and we're starting tech in 2 days, but that's what making a new play is.
Yes. In your plays, I notice in stage direction, she cries very hard.
Yeah, sorry.
Well, no, that's okay, but I mean, you want the actress to do that.
Yeah, I mean, that's why I said sorry, because it's like a horrible thing to read as an actor. You know, it's horrible, but it is important, because these are really damaged, in that play, they're really damaged people.
Yeah.
And she's in a profound amount of like soul-racking pain in that moment. So I think it is really important.
So here you are as a playwright. People are coming now auditioning for your play.
Yeah.
Does that feel? Because you've been on the other side. What are you looking for when an actor comes in and auditions for your play?
Sort of going back to what I said earlier, is like not taking things personally. I know for years I would be like, how come that actor got called in and I didn't? And like, I'm just laughing at what an idiot I am. And like, it's like when I'm on the other side of it, someone will suggest someone, I'll be like, oh my God, that guy's perfect. I don't know why I didn't think of him. Mm-hmm. And you just realize how not personal it is. Like, It's just not about you. Or you'll see someone who's so good, but this other person happens to just be a little more right for whatever reason.
It's not that they're better, it's just that they're more right.
Yeah, we had that with my last play. A funny thing happened. It was between...
You have to say the whole title.
A funny thing happened on the way to the gynecologic oncology unit at Memorial Sloan Kettering Cancer Center of New York City. So we had auditions for that, and we were down to 2 actors, but one of them was just more sort of right for the part. And that doesn't mean that the other one isn't amazing. And that was important for me to see as an actor, because often if someone else gets the part, I'll be told like, you know, oh, she just brought a quality that you didn't have. But I'll be like, oh, that just means I suck. But it's like, no, this other guy, I couldn't have more respect for him. I will be the first in line to buy a ticket to anything he does. He just wasn't the perfect fit for this. Okay, so there's a woman in that play who has 2 lines. Oh, no, we gave her 4. I wrote 2 more.
That was nice.
She's
anyway, she was amazing.
Amazing, and she has done every reading and workshop of that play.
Oh yeah.
And this is, you know, a good. I like this in terms of networking, which is a horrible word, but I met her because she did a reading of a play I wrote 6 years ago in a basement. You know, and and then we needed someone to play someone with 4 lines, and I emailed her, and or sent her a Facebook message or something, and I was like, I'm sure you wouldn't want to do this, but is there any way you'd be open to reading these 4 lines in this reading of this thing? And she's like, yeah. And then she's like, I love this play. I love not only having 4 lines, because she's in a coma for most of the play. And she was like, I consider it very active. I'm always listening. I'm always responding in my head. She was amazing. It was a tour de force performance.
You looked at her. You watched her.
Yes. She shaved her head for that play.
Wow.
She has 4 lines. And she's a hero of the American theater. Her name's Jacqueline Sidney. She's amazing. But I like that story too, because it's just about like showing up and saying yes. Because she could have been like, nah, I can't. I don't want to that day. And that was her off-Broadway debut.
Has any of your plays, have you gotten stuck because they're too close and you can't go on?
Oh, too close to home?
Yeah.
Yes. The one I'm writing right now is really painful. Okay. Usually I find writing very joyous, hard but joyous. And the one I'm writing right now, I'm writing about, it's loosely based on a really dark experience I had. And I love writing dark stuff, obviously, but this feels really painful and fun, but yeah, it feels...
Well, why do you want to write it?
I don't know. I think it's important for me to tell this story. Again, especially in light of our political climate, it's about sort of toxic masculinity and misogyny and self-imposed misogyny that women, impose on themselves. And that's a story that I want to tell and that I think is important to explore. But it's like gross and it's like not fun to sit in that every day, but it feels important.
Good for you.
Oh, thanks.
What advice can you give to those who want to write and star in their own play or movie?
I have only written and starred in my own thing once, which was twice, I guess, which was that movie, He's Way More Famous Than You. And then I did make a web series with Ryan Spahn and Michael Urie, who we made He's Way More Famous Than You together. And I acted in that, and Ryan did too. It's really hard. I don't know. To be totally frank, I purposefully have not acted in my own plays because I felt that I had sort of like people who knew my work at all knew me as an actor. And I felt that if I did act in my own plays, it would sort of look like I was writing them as a vehicle for myself, which I wasn't. I was writing them because I had a story I wanted to tell. And as I said, I want to be the playwright. Like, I guess I just feel like being the playwright is a hard enough job that I don't need to also have another very hard job at the same time. So for me, like a lot of people say, like, why don't you act in your own plays? And maybe I will at some point, but I'm like, that's a freaking full-time job if you're taking playwriting seriously. And I've worked with playwrights who don't treat it like a full-time job, but I have to. So if you're really, if you're being the playwright, you have to be at every preview. You have to be taking notes, throughout the whole thing. You have to be rewriting constantly if you want it to be really good. In my humble opinion. So you don't have time to go memorize those. It's really hard. Right. You can maybe, but it's really hard. So that's what I've done. So I feel like maybe focus on each one and get really good at each one, because it takes a long time and a lot of work, and I'm really working on it still. And then maybe try doing both at the same time. With movies and TV and stuff, and web series and stuff, it's a little easier, I think, because you can break it up. But with plays, because like if I'm acting in a play and I want to change a line, I can't say, hey, can we change that line? Because I'm in the play, But if I'm sitting in the audience, I can whisper to my assistant or write it down, and then that's how we make it better. Yeah.
Last question, Halley Feiffer. What aspect of your personality has, to your surprise, become more accessible?
Well, I think I was always a pretty dark person, and I used to sort of try to hide that, and I used to sort of run from that and pretend that's not who I was. And what I've found is like the more because I'm also a very light person, like I lean on humor, I'm both. And the more I really am honest about both those things and embrace both those aspects of myself and don't run away from both of those, the more abundance I see. So like, for instance, like that TV show I talked about that I sold, like that's about like a lot of really dark stuff loosely based on my personal life, that I was like, gosh, who would have thought that when I went through these horrific experiences, I could be making money off them? Like, this is great. Like, I'm being sort of facetious, but not really. Like, I think that's something that, like, the pain in my past is something that I've really mined in my work, and I didn't really know you could do that when I was just going on auditions for like Gossip Girl, and like that's something that I'm really grateful for and hope I can keep exploring, because it's like alchemy. You get to turn, discomfort into A, joy, B, something that can maybe help other people, and like what's better than that, really? With my play, I'm Gonna Pray for You So Hard, someone said to me, we did a reading of it like at the Bank Street Theater years ago, and someone said, oh, I'm so surprised a woman wrote this. And I was like, oh, why? And she was like, well, first of all, there's a lot of bad language. And second of all, your main character is so unappealing. And I was like, to me, I feel like that in and of itself is really sexist, like that women can't be unappealing. Or like this summer, I was working on a TV show. I was writing for a TV show based on Jonathan Franzen's novel Purity. And a lot of people were like, this book has received criticism for being misogynistic. And I was like, I feel the opposite, because it's the female characters are really unsavory, but the male characters are really unsavory. Just everyone in this book is really unsavory. And I think it's misogynistic to be like, why are the women being so mean? It's like, because women are mean. A lot of us are really mean sometimes, So, I mean, I'll speak for myself, but, it's like, that's what I try to do, is just write women the way that I see them and the way I experience being a woman, which is like just being really complicated and flawed. The 3 plays that I've had produced that are dark, I mean, which is the 3 plays I've had produced, I don't attach to the darkness. Like, I never felt like working on those that I'm taking that home, in a sense, if that makes sense. I think the actors did. I don't know about that play. I know Betty Gilpin and Reed Birney were really vocal about how hard doing I'm Gonna Pray for You So Hard was for them, and that they felt like they couldn't shake the darkness of it. But I never felt, I think because as a playwright, it's sort of your duty to stay detached. As an actor, it's your duty to really be vulnerable. and dive in and access the darkness and all the feelings. And as a playwright, you can't really do that because you can't be objective. So I didn't feel working on that like, oh, like, you know, when this is over, I'm going to feel like I've lost 10 pounds. You know, I just found it really fun. And there was a lot of humor in that play. Some nights the audience agreed and some nights they didn't. But that's important for me too. I think that's why I also lean heavily into humor in my plays, because they do tend to be dark. But, you know, there's always humor and in life. And to me, plays that are only dark or any kind of work, you know, there's a lot of TV out there now that I can't watch. People say this show is really good, but I'm like, but no one jokes.
I know.
Like in life, you know, even if someone's dying, you're like, this sucks. Like, you know, like they're like,
At least the funeral was fun.
yeah, exactly. Like that's not what life is. Just not that bleak, really.
I know.
It's horrible.
It's horrible,
but it's
not bleak.
amazing too.
Yeah.
It's like, where's
Not
the?
bleak every day.
It's not.
Every day,
Yeah.
every day.
It's so anyway. I think that was my experience of that. I still don't know what this play is. It's so crazy. But basically, I love that play, obviously. And I felt like, I remember we did that play in high school. We did a production of it. And our teacher was like, this is, it says, you know, Anton Chekhov wrote like Three Sisters, a comedy. And we were all so confused by that because it just seems really, to use a word I've used 7,000 times, really bleak. And she helped us see, you know, the humor in it, and that was an amazing experience, sort of like with the front page where I was like, this is a tragedy. Oh no, ha ha, it's funny. You know, like I was like, this is a tragedy. Oh no, it's funny. Like flipping it, or it's both. It really is both. It's very moving and it's very, very funny, darkly funny. And so I felt like I couldn't understand that, and I feel like at first, and I feel like a lot of people don't see the humor in Chekhov, and a lot of the productions that I've seen, I don't see the humor in it. Yeah, so I wanted to sort of write Three Sisters the way that I saw it and heard it and felt it, and so that's what I did.
You're not using a Russian translation? Are you looking at all the
I
different...
took a couple different translations, mostly the Paul Schmidt, and basically my process was just looking at it and then reading what's on the page and then closing the book and then writing my version of that. But the sort of hook is that they all basically talk like millennials, because that's what I think a lot of the humor is that they're like lovable but really entitled brats who are like, ah, this sucks, why can't we go to Moscow? And it's like, you literally can go to Moscow right now, just go. But they can't because they actually love being miserable. And that's what I sort of wanted to explore. And it's in the very nascent stages, but I'm excited about it, and thanks for asking about it.
Well, thank you.
Thank you, Karen.
So much.
Thank you guys.